Hello, welcome to my channel. This is the first video in the Java programming series, and in this video we're going to learn about how Java works. Let's get started. To start off, imagine a situation in which you were given a task of translating a language, let's say English, to another more complex language, let's say Chinese, and your task was to translate the language without any grammatical errors in it. So how would you go about doing this? We'll come back to this topic later in the video. So in this Java programming series, we have to start off by first installing Java. And to install Java, we have to go to our browser and go on Google and search up Java JDK. Then the first link that pops up says Java SE, so we press on that link. Then we have Java SE 14, which is good enough for us, so we can go and press JDK download. Then scrolling down, we have Windows installer, which we install if we have Windows, and we use the macOS installer if you have macOS. And then we can either use the Linux Debian package or the Linux RPM package, depending on what form of Linux we have. And if you're using Manjaro Linux, which I am, then we can go and then just type in sudo pacman jdk-openjdk in the terminal, and then we can use sudo archlinux-java set java 13 openjdk to set the Java that we just installed as our default Java. Then the next thing we have to do is actually install an IDE that allows us to edit Java files and run them. And so the IDE I like to use is called Visual Studio Code, and it's not actually an IDE but a text editor, but using extensions we can give the text editor IDE-like features. But there are also other IDEs you can use, which are Eclipse, NetBeans, IntelliJ. And so here, to download the Visual Studio IDE that I like to use, you can go on code.visualstudio.com. And then you have to just run the installers over here. Okay, and now when we actually open up this Visual Studio Code, to actually use Java, we first have to go into the extensions tab, which we see right here, and then we can actually go and search up Java and then install this Java extension pack. Okay, so now that we actually have Java installed, then we actually have to set the environmental variable to Java on Windows, and if you're using Linux or Mac, the environmental variables are already set. And then the next thing that we have to do is actually follow this tutorial here, which I will link in the description, and set the java.home variable to our location where our JDK is located that we just installed. Okay, so now we actually can run Java. We have to go and say Ctrl+Shift+P to actually create a new Java project. And here the Ctrl+Shift+P opens up the command palette, and then if we search up Java, then one of the things that we get is Java create Java project. So pressing on that, we can actually go and say documents, and this is where we put our project. And so I'm going to select this location, and I'm going to call the project hello w. Okay, so now I just created a project with the name hello w. Okay, so basically in our basic default settings, we're given this project, this file called app.js, which has some default Java code. Let's go ahead and delete that because we want to start the Java project from scratch. So we can go ahead and delete both even the app folder. And so now everything in this source folder, all the Java files will be run. So if I add just a file called hello world.java, then I can say public static void main string args. So what I just typed is a function in Java, and basically this main function is the function that runs in every program, and it is required for that program to actually run. Okay, so in this file, in this folder, in this function, I can write system.out.println hello world. And now we have basically created our Java file, our first Java file, and running this we see that we get hello world as our output. So congratulations on writing your first line of code in Java. Now the next part we have to understand is exactly what's happening behind the scenes for this system.out.println, this thing to give us hello world in our console. Well, okay, Java is what we call a compiled language. So to actually run this file, we can actually go and go to source, which is where our file is located, the folder our file is located, and we can say java c hello world.java, which is the name of our file, and we see that we get this new hello world.class file. And then now if we run java hello world.java, we get the same hello world printed out. So basically what this is doing, what this IDE like structure is doing, is that it's actually doing hello java c for the hello world class, and then it's doing java hello world to actually run the code, and that's what we see right here. And how can we prove this? Well, in the bin we see that we have the same hello world.class file generated. To understand what exactly happens when we press the run button in our program, we first have to understand how a programming language works. Well, a programming language can only be understood by us, the programmers, and not the computer, because the computer can only understand in ones and zeros. So what exactly happens when we press the run button is that the programming language that we wrote is converted to a machine language that the computer can understand, and then the computer follows those instructions in the machine language to print out what we want. Okay, to understand what exactly happens in Java when we type in java c, we must first understand what exactly our scenario is for. Well, there are two main ways to solve that scenario. The first way is to actually check the entire transcript first for errors, and then we translate that transcript into Chinese. Or we could, the second way is to actually check each sentence, and then after we check the sentence, we then translate it. And so this would be where we have a sentence 1, we check that, and then we translate it. Then we move on to sentence 2, we check that, we translate it. And then sentence 3, we check that, we translate it. And so this is related to programming in that we have two main paradigms for actually running our programs. And the first one is a compiler, and the second one is an interpreter. So the compiler is like the first approach to solving the scenario, which is where we check the program first, or we convert the program to machine language first, and then we run it. Or we have the interpreter language, where we, instead of going sentence by sentence, we go line by line, and we first check it, so convert that line to machine language, and then we translate it or run it and see what the output of that line is. Understanding what happens behind the scene is the first step in learning programming. And now we have to understand what this means for us as programmers. Well, this means that as we are translating our code to machine language all the time, and machine language is limited because it has only ones and zeros, we do not have an unlimited amount of commands that we can give. And so we have to understand that the limitations are caused by the limitations of what a computer can actually do. So let's say that we want to see and recognize cats and dogs. Well, a computer does not have eyes, so it cannot see a cat and a dog. And so we have to actually create an algorithm that allows this computer to see a cat and a dog and to understand it by using what a computer can do. We can once again understand the limitations that code gives us by just typing in C or C dogs and cats. Well, looking at this, we see that this won't work because we see that it's a syntax error. So the code cannot understand every single statement that we write. We are limited in the number of statements we can write. I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. And turn on bell notifications to receive updates about when I will update new videos for my Java programming series. And also leave a comment below to tell me how I did and how much you enjoyed this video. And if you have any feedback for me in my teaching skills, please tell me that too. Thank you.